In my recent review of Cloud Atlas, a book which plays with very strict, very constricting forms and generic conventions in order to be the most free of experiences and the most creative and original one, I mentioned poetry such as that of William Butler Yeats, Robert Frost, which does pretty much the same. They follow strict metric conventions and structural conventions and rather strict rhyme schemes in order to show you the liberty that can be found in that. I am in no way a big expert, but I think that's one of the big appeals of these types of formalist poems, and Aaron Poochigian very often, very much in Manhattanite, writes in that same type of style. It does follow specific rhyming schemes and certain structures, but never at any point you feel like what he is writing he's contrived or constricted. And absolutely not. I would even say that his poetry reads like fiction, like prose. If not that would sound slightly insulting to me, because his poetry is just much more genius. And I could talk at length about this, but there are two issues. First one is that, as mentioned, I do not know that much about it. You will have heard that I'm leaning a little bit too much on rather generic terms. The second one being that I could just as easily read you a poem or two. I'm going to read you one poem from this collection, from Manhattanite, which is an awesome collection, and I think you should read it. And I'm going to read another one at the end of the video. If you stick around for that one features monsters and is rather awesome. This one is called The Recidivist, and pardon my pronunciation already, recidivist is possibly not the right way to pronounce the word, but anyway, this Wednesday Stephen, 7 weeks confined for getting busted wasted at the wheel, will bus back home to face a dry ordeal again. He just might leave the curse behind. Yes, after terrorizing humankind, he found religion. He will weep and kneel. May he withstand the bottle's dark appeal. May he maintain a purgatory mind. We too are burdened. We must not be blind to lies and lapses as we watch him heal. Certainly he could now stay straight for real. We all must struggle not to be resigned. Oh, Stephen, charming Stephen, much maligned Stephen, my blessings on this bout of zeal. But damn it, doubts are circling, and I feel helpless to catch the crash I have divined. This is one of my favorite poems in a great, amazing collection, and several of these poems do the same thing that the Recidivist does, which is that on a certain level they are very condensed, 10-second, when you read them, 15-second, 30-second short stories. Here you get the story of a man who was sent to jail for driving under the influence and was released, and is this divination, is this vision of the future because he is just going to follow that cycle of addiction once again? Is it because he's actually going to die? Is that implied in that last line? Is this a poem about how you cannot really trust your friends even when they need you the most? About how malignant, after all, we all are, how we dismiss people such as this Stephen, people with addictions, as hopeless, inexplicable change of scene. I was saying, these poems like Recidivist, do all of these things at the same time. They are a short story about a bizarre, sinister premonition. At the same time, they capture a specific moment, a hopeful moment in the life of a man, as seen through his skeptical friends. They capture the feeling one has when he can't help but think bad things about their friends, even when they should be most supportive. It captures a specific state of mind. It does all of these things at the same time. And this happens time and again in Poochigian's poems. Very often it became difficult for me, with some of these poems, to establish whether they were even narrative or lyrical in the first place. They were both of these things and more. Last year I read and reviewed Mr. Either Or by Poochigian, which is a novel in verse that is absolutely thrilling and action-packed and mixes the most diverse genres and is inventive and is addictive, and you'll have a great time with it. I can't recommend it highly enough. It was one of my very favorite books from last year, and one thing I said about that one is also true with Manhattanite. What I mean is that both of these are books you can very much read in a single afternoon. In the case of Manhattanite, you can pretty much read it in about an hour. It flows very fast, and in a way you will want to read it very fast because the Poochigian's verse are so musical and flow so well, and you'll want to experience more. But at the same time, you'll find the opposite tendency in both of these books, in Manhattanite, in Mr. Either Or, which is that sometimes you will encounter a particularly cryptic poem, maybe here, not cryptic and as in indescribable, but as in mysterious, or you'll find a very musical couple of lines, or you'll want to experience a certain rhyme scheme a couple of times to understand how it works, or you'll just find a poem that is eerie and sinister and just gives you the creeps, and you want to find out especially exactly why that is, and so you'll reread what you've just read, and you'll find yourself spending maybe 10 minutes on just a stanza or a couple of verses. These double tendencies, of course, what you find in all good literature very much, the fact that it's so compelling you just want to carry on, but it's so beautiful you just want to stop and admire it for a while. And with Manhattanite, what it means is that these poems will become very personal very fast, because you'll, with this type of instant rereading that they invite, immediately you feel like you've connected with these poems and you know them a long time, even though you've maybe experienced it for the first time a couple of days ago. And this is a book, I imagine, if it's anything like Mr. Either Or, and my strong suspicion is that it is, you'll find yourself going back to it several times and re-exploring it several times. And A.E. Stallings, another very talented poet, immensely talented poet and classicist, just like Poochigian, commented in one of the blurbs for this book, commented that this is a book you'll find yourself going back to time and again to find solace, while not being exactly a feel-happy collection of poetry. Not at all. So many of these poems actually are sinister. Some of these, as mentioned before, even almost touch upon the realm and the domain of horror fiction, but some of these are sinister for the most various of reasons, and some of these are sinister for political reasons. Some of these poems were written in the aftermath, let's say, of the 2016 election, and whatever your country of origin, wherever you are in the world when you read these poems, you will I'm sure you can relate to the feelings expressed by Poochigian. These are not political points as in they're trying to drive home a specific point or they have an agenda of sorts. They just express the vast frustration somebody feels in a world where, politicians seem to be capital E evil even by politician standards, or a world where, the country you knew and loved has suddenly turned sinister and maybe not the place you grew up in, which is, once more, with all the stuff that's going on in the world, I'm sure lots of people in whatever country you're from, you can relate to these feelings, and they're captured beautifully in Poochigian's poetry. Once more, if you like poetry, whether you read lots of poetry or whether you just would like to try and see what the fuss is about, whether you remember liking some poems from your high school years, whether you've never read poetry at all and you just want to give it a try, by all means go check a few pages of Manhattanite online. I'm sure you can do it on Amazon, for instance, and listen to this second poem I'm going to give you before I end this review. This second one, as promised, is about monsters and is called Galapagos Now. As far as I understand it, it's about some kind of expedition turning very hideous and then being recollected by the narrator in a sort of H.P. Lovecraft's Dagon-ish way, if you get what I mean. Anyway, guide gone, the stutter of a trail I turned to gully, cut a no man's gash through shell and shale, and died just shy of reeking what? A sump? A swamp? A green and hairy goulash of a secret slough? Rival gropes of topiary strained the sunlight. What got through confided, riding on the surface, some deep beast's lithe extremity, its nib an optic nub that, nervous, throbbed in awe of plain old me. Plunk, and the scope was sunken, bubbles glug-glug-glasped, and, as if charmed, what scrummage of abominables rose from ooze? What lemur-armed amoebas lapped in furs of germs? What zebras flapping stingray wings? What feathered eels? What pulsing worms bipedal? What ungodly things? No way that lot had proper parents. The stew's dark virtues must have spawned miracles of bizarre aberrance, and reared them there, beyond, beyond. Eureka! But, a meek explorer, I shrieked and bolted, in my mind the horror of it, my own horror, one-fanged feeler's length behind. The tale of curse was total hooey, but damn, one whiff of rot or fan, and the whole palpitating gooey rhapsody bubbles up again. The tale of curse was total hooey makes me think this may be actually not about an actual expedition, but about some kind of tale about an expedition. It's like a horror story, but who knows, and this is the beauty of this thing. They'll set your mind on fire every time you reread them. I couldn't recommend Manhattanite more. Thank you as always for watching, guys. In a second you'll find links on the screen to my review of Mystery the Roar, which was a great novel, absolutely lovely. In the near future I'd like to read Vikram Seth's The Golden Gate. There it is over there, I'm sure you can see it, which is another novel in verse I've been highly recommended. And you'll find a link to another of my videos, and thank you as always for watching. See you in the next video. Bye, guys. Yes, after terrorizing humankind he found religion. He will keep with he, mia mamma.